So welcome everybody to a Tilt webinar. This is about enabling learner agency through free apps. It's Thursday, the 13th of January, 2022. I'm Helen Myers. I'm chair of the London branch of the Association for Language Learning. We always thank Heike Philp for her help in helping us set this up, and Linguiscope, who help us particularly with our website. Joe Dale is the person who's brought us all together, and I'd like you to introduce yourself, Joe, before you introduce our presenter later on.
Thanks so much, Helen. So welcome everyone to the new Tilt webinar for 2022, the latest one. It's really lovely to see some familiar faces in the session. And we're in for a real treat today, which is awesome. So a little bit about me. I'm an independent languages consultant. In the chat, I put in a document for 18 sessions around the use of technology and languages, which could be applied to across the curriculum as well, if you'd like. And any context you find yourself in at the moment in these crazy times, if you're teaching a hybrid lesson or a remote lesson or just simply face-to-face lesson, then there'll be something for everyone in that document. If you'd like any extra support, paid support, then feel free to contact me, ask me to do a webinar for your department or a set of schools or for your consortium or your MAT, whatever you'd like me to do, not only in this country, but anywhere in the world. For those people watching the recording, unless you're watching live from further afield, I would absolutely love to help. But enough about me, let's carry on with the main meat of the session today.
Okay, but thanks, Joe, for all you do. And be aware, yes, Joe is willing to get up at any time in the morning, day or night, to come along and help you. So thank you for that, Joe. I'd like to give a little plug for the Association for Language Learning. If you belong to an association, whether in this country, in the UK with ALL or somewhere else, please put that in the chat now and encourage people to join. It really is important, I think, that people join an association so that we can channel views and they can be then passed on to the powers that be that have the power. Ever so important, I'm sure, in any country, but especially at the moment in this one. We've got other webinars on the way. If you look onto our site, you'll see the events. I'd particularly like to give a plug, though, for Saturday, January the 22nd. Normally we meet in person in London on the South Bank in the lovely British Film Institute. Sadly, we've had to cancel that because of the plan B that we've got. But we're going to be moving online, which of course means that lots of people can join us. So do come along to that. I'll put the link in the chat, but we've got lots of fantastic speakers for there. But this is the one that you've come to hear, this particular webinar. Joe, would you like to do the introduction?
I would love to. Thanks, Helen. So as we all know, I do enjoy going to lots and lots of different online sessions, different conferences and symposiums and so on and so forth. And I was lucky enough to attend a Cyprus one, which was CYTEA, which is the Cyprus Association for Teachers of English. And I've worked with them in the past when we were allowed to travel and all this sort of thing. That was great fun. And as part of the CYTA conference, I was very lucky enough to see Carlos Lindad. Do let me know if I've pronounced that correctly, Carlos, by the way.
Perfect.
Is that okay for you?
Yeah.
And I was really impressed. I'm always looking out for interesting content and then contacting the speaker and asking them to take part in a Tilt webinar so that we can see a longer version of the session, or just introduce the session to a wider audience, particularly UK teachers. So I'm absolutely delighted when I contacted Carlos via LinkedIn, I think, if I remember correctly, and he said yes straight away. So thank you so much for doing this, Carlos. If you could just maybe introduce yourself. As I've said, you're coming live from Portugal. Just give us a little bit about a bit of background around the subjects that you teach, the level that you're teaching at, and so on and so forth. And we can't wait to hear all about how you can enable learner agency through free apps. Over to you, Carlos.
All right, Joe. Okay, thanks, Joe. Thanks, Helen. I'm a high school English teacher. I'm currently based in Portugal. I usually commute between Portugal and Spain because I'm currently finishing my PhD in the University of Vigo. And to be honest with you, it's an absolute pleasure to be sharing some of my experience, also my research, more or less the next 45 minutes. And we'll leave the last 10 minutes for some Q&A, and hopefully I'll be able to clear any questions, any doubts, any anything you want to ask, to be honest with you. I'm gonna just press play and just gonna move forward here, because I know some people are have to leave for dinner, for other meetings. So let me just push forward here and go on. So this session is designed around 3 key aspects: the concept of learner agency, quite recent concept; the teaching practices that promote high levels of learner agency, which are obviously linked to contemporary approaches to teaching and learning foreign languages; and the use of free apps to bring these practices to life in the ELT classroom. So before I get into the nitty-gritty, I'd like to get to know the audience just a little bit better. I'd like to know if you run a low-tech, a mid-tech, or a high-tech classroom. Now remember, a low-tech classroom is one of those classrooms where you have very limited use of technology, and a high-tech classroom uses complex electronics that requires training and maintenance. And a mid-tech classroom would be something obviously in the middle. So can you just please quickly share in the chat box what type of classroom you run? Is it a low-tech, a mid-tech, or a high-tech classroom? Can we just see very quickly in the chat box? Okay, so some replies are coming in. All right, low-tech, high-tech. Okay, we're getting some very diverse responses here. Okay, and we're in the mid-tech classroom. Brilliant, mid-tech, a lot of mid-techs. Okay. Helen low-tech, Leanne low-tech. Okay, interesting. So for those of you that replied low-tech classroom, do not worry. Everything you're going to see here today is designed to help you improve your learner agency, but also to give you those little hacks that you can use to comfortably shift to a mid-tech scenario. And for those of you that run a high-tech classroom, well, maybe you can obviously suggest alternative apps or alternative strategies to the different frameworks that I'm going to present throughout the presentation. By the way, keep your phones at the ready, because throughout the presentation, there are several QR codes that you can scan so you can quickly access some websites or some materials that I'll be presenting. So perhaps keeping your phone right next to you will be very, very useful. So a few months ago, OUP published a brilliant position paper on learner agency authored by these extraordinary experts. You've probably heard of some of them, particularly Diane Larson-Freeman, Paul Driver, Andy Gao, Sarah Mercer. And I'm sure that maybe they've been at least name dropped in some professional development context. According to these authors, learner agency is all about understanding that learning is more effective and more efficient when teaching practices support learners as active agents in their learning. So learner agency refers to the feeling of ownership, that sense of control that learners have over their learning. Learners who are agentive have a growth mindset. They believe that they're in control of their learning, that they have the ability to learn and improve. Agentive learners take initiative, seizing and even creating opportunities to learn. They take risks, confident that they can learn from their mistakes. They're also resilient. They have the ability to adapt and persevere in order to overcome setbacks. So this quote clearly summarizes the concept of learner agency. While learners are empowered to be active agents by supporting learner agency, teachers, the teachers, we don't give up any of our responsibilities. We still need to set up and manage the classroom. We need to manage interactions while engaging with our students and maintaining their focus on the relevant aspects of ELT. Now, one of the authors, Andy Gao, one of the authors of this position paper, Andy Gao, presented in a talk called Language Learner Agency, Why and How It Matters, an overview of teaching practices with high learner agencies. So such practices consist of inviting students to set learning goals, quite interesting, quite relevant, students and guiding students to generate their learning content, promoting learning-centered teaching, using emerging learning situations to teach, providing a principled use of a language other than English, quite an interesting topic, designing and using open-ended activities. People like Pennier are always talking about how it's important to overcome this idea that activities in course books are closed-ended and how we can shift them into open-ended activities. I'm going to give some suggestions on that as well. Encouraging students to form learning communities, exploring answers together. Okay, so teachers and learners are exploring the answers together. Students are not passively waiting for the teacher to provide an answer. Promoting learner-driven feedback, opposed to only having the teacher-centered feedback, and enhancing scenarios where students teach their peers. Now, overall, learners with a sense of their own agency are more likely to be engaged and invested in learning English. Teachers, as I've mentioned, play an essential role in facilitating the development of learner agency by providing the opportunities for students to exercise and enhance their agency. And students who actually develop learner agency are prepared for success, are prepared for the challenges that the 21st century workplace has. And it's a very challenging workplace out there. Now, a word of caution. When we promote learner agency, we have to be conscious of the type of classroom that we run. If we run a heavily based coursebook-centered approach, a coursebook-centered classroom, this might be tricky. Now, Brian Tomlinson, one of the leading experts in material development, in his latest publication suggests that we're going back to a grammar-dominated coursebook, and everything seems to be designed around the grammar unit. Textbooks undoubtedly facilitate declarative knowledge and present countless opportunities for drilling, but they're not exactly focused on exploring the world around us, which is actually key in a learner agency framework. Also important to keep in mind is the SAMR model. Now, this framework, created by Dr. Juan Puentedura, categorizes 4 different degrees of classroom technology integration. Now, the letters SAMR stand for substitution, augmentation, modification, and redefinition. So with the ASMR model, we can be specially, it can help us provide a blended learning when integrating classroom technology that makes teaching and learning more seamless for educators, obviously, and for the learners. Now, looking at the base of this model, technology is directly substituted by a more traditional teaching tool or method. It's a simple direct replacement. In this step, you ask yourself, what students stand to gain by replacing this traditional tool with technology? Invariably, some situations will be better served by a pen and paper. Not all learning outcomes will be improved by using technology, so we need to have this into consideration. In the augmentation stage, technology is again directly substituted, but with significant enhancement to the student experience, okay, to the learning experience. In this step, we as the teacher should ask ourselves, does technology increase or augment our learners' productivity? Does it help potentiate their learning? In the modification stage, we're beginning to move from enhancement to transformation. So instead of replacing or enhancing, this is an actual change. It implies a change to the lesson design and to the learning outcomes. The critical question here is, does the technology that we're going to use significantly alter the learning task? And lastly, in the top of the pyramid, in the redefinition stage, the pinnacle is all about how integrated classroom technology can transform a student and a learning experience. So in this case, we have to ask how these technological tools, how these apps, how these platforms are allowing us, the educators, to redefine a traditional learning task in a way that wouldn't be possible without the tech, creating a novel experience. So for example, after completing group work and asking for feedback, like having maybe a situation with peer feedback, both tasks can be complete, the situation can be completed offline and students in pairs and small groups can get feedback on a task. We can think about introducing technology and have students network with other students from a different school to see how regional differences impact the issue that we were discussing with our students. So this implies a very interesting and novel experience for our learners. We're not talking in our small protective bubble. We're talking with people and with students from a different part of our country or from a foreign country, okay? So this is taking the learning experience a step further, having students interact in a real way, in a significant way with citizens, with learners, with peers in a different context, sometimes in a different country, to examine key differences that allow them to be active and tolerant citizens. And of course, if you're used to doing e-tweening projects, you're probably already accustomed to these type of scenarios. Now, let's look at 9 teaching practices with high learner agency. Let's get into the nitty-gritty. First, it's really important to invite your students to set learning goals at the beginning of the school year. Goals will be maybe more general or more specific depending on the learner, the level, and the context. For instance, a learner may want to improve his or her pronunciation. Perhaps the goal is to be more intelligible or to improve knowledge in another language-related area. It's essential to challenge our learners in thinking, what do I want? Where am I now? And how am I going to get there? So here's an example. So perhaps the goal is to feel better about speaking English in class. Maybe we're talking with a student that is extremely shy, maybe is an introvert. The reality is that this learner lacks confidence and is embarrassed to open his or her mouth in front of the classroom. So perhaps there are different scenarios, there are different options. Maybe there are confidence building activities that we can do in class, or maybe we could do with the school counselor. Maybe the student can start speaking in very small groups, or maybe with a peer. And then we have to look at what is actually going to be done. Maybe the student is going to join the English club. Maybe we're running an English club, and the student is going to start participating outside of the classroom to gain a little bit more confidence. Maybe the student is going to complete additional vocabulary work outside of the classroom. So there are different ways to get there. And after the term, we can actually balance and reflect if we got there, or if we need to redefine our strategies to reach this goal. Now, in a traditional classroom, we would do this in a notebook. Obviously, we could write these little goals in our notebook and what we're going to do to get and achieve our goal. But in the 21st century classroom, we can complete this on Padlet or Wakelet. Now, Wakelet might be not as visually appealing as Padlet, but allows you to create a high number of boards, which is very useful if you teach multiple classes and multiple levels. Now, for example, through Padlet, we can easily create a wall like this one, a stream, like the ones we see in a blog, or we see on a Facebook account. We can create a grid, a shelf, a map that can help you. Maybe a map can help you incorporate intercultural awareness in your lessons, and you can pin some aspects relevant to different English-speaking countries. Maybe the timeline will be helpful to create a scenario where you're revising verb tenses, creating a timeline so you can see how these different tenses interact with each other and work. Maybe the timeline can help you set up scenarios where students will be talking about the biography of a certain writer, actor, musician. Well, the sky's the limit. You can create very interesting outcomes. Maybe it's going to be a repository. Like, for instance, I have students that have revisited their goals and have submitted their goals for the second term. Some of them needed to rethink their strategies. What I did in the first term to reach my goals was not sufficient. So they redid the strategies and uploaded in our class Wakelet. And when we reach the end of the second term, we're obviously going to revisit them. And we're gonna, before we do our self-assessment, we're gonna think about if this was effective or if we need to bring further changes for the third term. So Padlet, Wakelet, very useful to complete writing tasks, very useful even to use as a repository of the work that was completed by our students. Very, very interesting tools to have in mind. Now, regarding the second practice, WordWall is a great outlet to encourage learners in learning their own and creating their own learning content. Now, what do I mean by this? So throughout the term, throughout the semester, maybe you work in a scenario where your school is not organized in terms like mine, it's organized in semesters. Learners can take turns in creating a unique revision activity and sharing it among them to facilitate revision work. So for instance, having the learners create a revision exercise based on the lexical item that we were teaching. Maybe we're teaching the topic of food, maybe we're revising the topic of sports, if we're teaching maybe an A1, A2 level, maybe we want students to revise a grammatical topic, maybe we want them to create a unique exercise on if clauses. Now, having these students create their own learning content and sharing it with the group is very, very interesting, and it's very empowering. They're doing their revision exercises. We're getting formative feedback when we notice and when we see their interactions, how they completed the work. And it gives us very unique insight in how our students learn, and it can give us unique insight to assess our learners formatively. And if you don't know word wall is very interesting because we can create different type of game-like activities with programming one game. So like I can program a number of questions for a quiz, and I can easily shift into a different type of game. And so what the questions I programmed for the quiz can quickly be altered into a matching exercise or a random wheel exercise, etc. So it's also interesting that I can revise the same content through different type of activities without having to program additional questions or additional answers. And of course, the word wall community is very interesting because there are countless numbers of activities done by peers, our peers, the teachers, done by students all around the world, and students can easily connect with this content and do their revision exercises before the next lesson or before a moment where they'll be assessed. Now, learning-centered teaching is all about departing from the traditional model where the teacher is at the center of the learning process and is the protagonist of every single lesson. This doesn't conform with the 21st century classroom where learning should be student-centered and the teacher should assume the role of a facilitator. Now, Mia McMeekin has provided some very straightforward outlines, for instance, in the one that I'm sharing right here, of 28 student-centered instructional strategies that fit this category of learner agency. Now, by analyzing her work, we noticed that oral presentations, KWL charts, brainstorming, simulations, debates are strongly connected with promoting learner agency and can be adjusted to fit our teaching goals. I strongly suggest you check Mia McMeekin's work. She has created some very useful tips for teachers and things that we can quickly print out, have it in the middle of our notes. If we use a course book, have in the middle of a course book and have those tips there if we need some extra inspiration in the middle of a lesson. For instance, Canva, talking about another outlet, Canva is a great alternative to PowerPoint. It can guide learners in designing their own infographics, creating their own presentations, or even simulations of conversations they could be having over social media outlets, over Instagram or over Facebook, etc. And so through Canva, we can potentially connect to learning scenarios that is meaningful for our learners. And Canva, with the free layouts they have and with the educational account, is very, very useful to help our learners create beautiful brochures and complete work in a very interesting way, a very stunning way. Another useful tool to promote learner agency is Coggle. Now, Coggle allows you and your learners to design very visually appealing mind maps for brainstorm-related activities. However, there are many other alternatives to this one. I'm thinking of Padlet, for instance, and if you don't find Coggle intuitive or easy, maybe you'll find Padlet or another brainstorming app appealing. There are so many brainstorming apps out there. In the past, learning was all about the acquisition paradigm and seen as an individual activity. If you work hard and you study hard, you're likely to get a great job. And we know that in the 21st century context, the employer doesn't exactly hire solely based on academic background. If we promote language acquisition by accommodating a wider learning context, looking at it as a social activity and looking at it as the inherent feature of life, we're likely to prepare our learners for a very unpredictable future. That's why when groups show strong interest on a particular social media outlet, and in this case, TikTok, we should take advantage of it because it allows us to connect to the apps that are meaningful for them, for the learners. Plus, there's a growing number of accounts dedicated to ELT on social media, which is useful for teachers and learners alike. So thinking of TikTok, TikTok was originally focused on karaoke, and karaoke has always been popular among language learners. And today, we have entire TV formats designed around not exactly karaoke, but designed around lip syncing. I'm talking about Lip Sync Battle or RuPaul's Drag Race. Learners can start by recording on TikTok a lip sync to the song that they'll be singing in class, and eventually, through the lip sync, that the teacher, maybe it's a song that you suggested as a teacher, or it's a song that they suggested as a group. Through the lip sync, we're going to have some very interesting outcomes, because at a later stage in class, we can introduce the karaoke moment. And in the karaoke moment, students will be empowered to reproduce sounds as closely as possible to the combinations they have already been exposed to in their L1. And by using lip syncing before the actual karaoke, learners will be partially exposed to the movements they should be performing with their lips and tongue. Moreover, learners will be exercising those key muscles which directly impact their overall intelligibility. Authors such as Corsano suggest that songs increase motivation, they promote recall and memory, they develop language skills, making them more meaningful for the learners. Again, he goes on, he suggests that the repetitive nature of songs and the inherent supersegmental features in songs make them more effective for pronunciation development. And of course, after the karaoke, the teacher can connect with that input and with that material and use the lyrics of the song for reading comprehension. Why not? Again, connecting the material that we're using, not with the other language skills, and not looking at it in isolation. And okay, so now we're just going to do listening. That's done. Now let's move on to reading and introduce something new. Everything is connected, and we can easily bridge something that we've done over karaoke, something that we listen to a reading exercise, and then to a speaking or to a writing exercise, and moving on to the more productive skills. All right. So if you've used TikTok, or perhaps you haven't, the duet feature from TikTok is the one that you want to keep in mind. It's the one that's going to help learners develop those important muscles in their mouths. It's where they're going to see their video opposed to the video that was uploaded on TikTok. Now, again, when we introduce social media apps, we need to be very careful with privacy issues. And TikTok in particular is a bit fishy with the privacy issues. It's not exactly something that we, the teachers, can control because, again, anybody can find the TikTok video and comment on it. So you need to be careful and make sure that you have permission, or again, if you're teaching adults or if you're teaching older learners that they already use TikTok, you're not going to have any problems with the parents or with the guardians. Unfortunately, I don't have time to go into a lot of details with all these apps and all these ideas, but if TikTok is not something that is possible in your scenario, well, why not considering using lyrics trading? It's easy, it's fun, and it's designed to help learners improve foreign language skills through music videos and through the lyrics that are inherent in those music videos. And then lyric training also has a special karaoke feature. So again, if social media, TikTok is not a reality, there are alternatives. Lyrics training is available for English language learning, but it's also available for other language learning. So again, sky's the limit, it's free, and it's very easy to use in the classroom or autonomously. Regarding the fifth frame proposed by Gao, a principled use of language other than English, perhaps a very interesting activity is audio description. This audio description allows you to introduce a culture-based translating activity that consists in turning the visual context of an event into language. So while situations offering additional information on cultural references for audiences who do not share the same background. So what exactly do I mean by this? So like in cinema, in television, in theater, in opera, in museums, audio description aims to present the world of images to blind and visually impaired audiences. So using the time span between dialogues, the audio descriptor discreetly provides the relevant and necessary information to compensate for the lack of visual capture on the part of the recipient. So this enables the visually impaired recipient to perceive the message as a harmonic whole and they'll follow the plot. And I found that audio description is indeed a challenging way to introduce a principled use of language other than English, to use in my scenario, the use of Portuguese. But as in creating audio description for a commercial, for a scene from a Netflix show, from a TV show, from a soap opera, students are very, very enticed and engaged in these activities. So for instance, I've done this with scenes with La Casa de Papel, which was very popular a while back and still very recent, just finished a couple of weeks ago, or the first Portuguese show on Netflix called Gloria, Spy Show. So, like we looked at these different scenes and we looked at how we could introduce these little notes to help the audience understand what is exactly going on between the scenes. And it's very interesting, especially if you work with students, special education needs students, or to help if you want to bring these issues to the classroom and make your students slightly more available to the differences that we don't all see the same, we don't all listen the same. It's very interesting to use audio description as a medium to talk about these issues. Now, open-ended activities, similarly to TikTok, using Instagram as a medium for language teaching has numerous advantages and applications. On the one hand, it's relatively intuitive, easy to use, easy to set up. Most of us teachers and a lot of our students already use Instagram and are familiar with it. Using social media apps like Instagram has the advantage of not asking our students to sign up to a new platform, which is often something that burdens our learners, like, oh, another login, another app, oh dear, I'm bored, so many apps. I don't even have space in my mobile, on my iPhone or my Android phone. So using these apps, these social media apps that are already present in their day-to-day lives has numerous advantages. And again, apps like Instagram or even TikTok, WhatsApp, Twitter, again, allows the teacher and students to connect quickly and collaborate, providing learners with a meaningful platform to develop language skills well beyond the physical classroom. So for instance, a lot of my students follow me. I have entire groups that follow me on Instagram. And so I use that as a medium to facilitate speaking and writing tasks. And I post deliberately on the topics that we're talking about or provoke them. So again, we were talking about street art, we were talking about graffitis, and well, I posted this. And we used it as a medium for a discussion. Again, talking about comfort food, guilty pleasures, talking about our mascots, talking about our pets. Again, very easily and innocent images can expose our learners, have a little glimpse into other things that are not in our course books or not in our classroom, and quickly discuss and have interesting conversations with them. We can, if we use apps and social media apps like Instagram, the teacher and students can take turns in posting. I'm thinking about the word of the week, the joke of the week, the quote of the week, the fact of the week. We can, again, I've used this with the EPA in having them uncode the secret message that was posted on Instagram. And so again, I'm exposing my learners to the phonetic symbols without having to dedicate entire lessons decoding and teaching them about the symbols. They're enticed, you're curious, oh, I think I know what this means. And they just send them a private message with the correct code. And again, there are many outlets and a lot of things you can do to facilitate this. There are a lot of online dictionaries that already offer the word of the day. There are a lot of sites that offer you the quote of the week, and you can easily do a copy paste there, and you don't have to come up with this material from scratch. Another, well, some of my top suggestions for using Instagram in the classroom, which I found that it's very effective in my practice, is again, asking students to take turns in posting the picture of the week, or post a picture about their weekend, about their Christmas break, and then talking about that in class during a specific amount of time. Challenging our learners to post a picture of what they're feeling about a certain situation, or creating an ongoing challenge where learners take turns to post, again, the series of the week, the film of the week, okay? So I think I've watched this film, it's so good. I really recommend everybody watch this over the weekend. Using Instagram to have learners explain a grammar topic, or it can present learners with a new word and extend and enlarge their vocabulary and lexical banks. Maybe share a mistake that they've made and come up with a solution. Okay, there's a spelling mistake here, there's a grammar mistakes here. Let's analyze this and let's come up with a solution together. Other ideas with Instagram that can be adapted to other social media outlets, where it can be adapted for Facebook, can be adapted to other outlets, and having our students challenged to post a picture that translates an issue in their neighborhood, in their community. And so they work together to come up with a solution for that issue that was posted. Have learners deliver a short or a longer summative oral presentation, and having learners see themselves filmed and seeing that maybe they have the incorrect body language when they're making a presentation. So very important to have them see themselves when they're delivering a presentation. Collaboratively post revision work. You could use WordWall for that, but you can also use Instagram. Have schools and learners from a different school, and again, if you're in an e-tweening project, this is quite easy, and use Instagram as a medium to have students connect with each other, or guide learners to take action in a campaign for global issues, for those important issues that maybe started out in their community but are connected to a wider global issue. And maybe this could be something like bullying, it could be healthy eating habits, it could be something related to career prospects, future jobs. Let's discuss this. Let's kind of what students from a different school think about this topic. Now, alternatively, Twitter, and Joe's a big fan of Twitter, can be used as a valuable and versatile tool for language learning. You can use Twitter to create a tweet and ask a question for your class or classes, something that they can vote. Okay, so our next writing assignment should be focused on blue-collar jobs, or green-collar jobs, or white-collar jobs, because we're talking about future jobs. We're talking about career prospects. So, okay, let's put on different topics for a writing or speaking assignment, and they can vote over Twitter. Additionally, I would also recommend in this scenario following certain Twitter bots, which are very useful. I'm thinking about the MoMA robot, which tweets a random object from the collection of the Museum of Modern Art 4 times a day, or PoemX, which is a cool bot that generates haiku-like poems and publishes it to Twitter. So it's very interesting material here that we can follow. And these bots, that not all bots are spam. These bots can actually promote some interesting material that we can use for our lessons, and we can have them and we can follow them for free. Now, moving forward, and we still have to cover a little bit more ground, and we're running out of time. So needless to stress that students can easily form learning communities on Messenger, on Telegram, on Discord, and use it for peer-to-peer learning, as well as complete collaborative work. Remember that these apps are among the most downloaded in the world. So when using social media in class, you're not burdening, again, this idea of not burdening learners by creating a new account for a different app. They're introducing and using the apps they use in their day-to-day lives as something natural, as something that connecting to their normal habits. So it's not a burden, it's not an obligation, it's something random, something normal that we do in our day-to-day lives. Some literature on the use of WhatsApp suggests that it allows learners to overcome their fears of interaction, which is also very interesting in our context as English language teachers. It helps them realize their potential, their abilities to practicing English online, and it also boosts their confidence in ways that when I first started using WhatsApp a few years ago, it really surprised me and blew my mind. Students via WhatsApp tend to engage in discussions confidently, and in turn improves their language skills. It also encourages collaboration among learners. The app also enhances communication by sending recorded and video clips as well as written messages, among others. So through WhatsApp, we can easily share a PDF document. We can ask students to share an audio comment on the issue at hand, or a written comment. The sky's the limit. It has a lot of advantages in expanding and enlarging the learning experience well outside the physical classroom. This is an example from my teaching practice. So initially, I would send a written group message like this one. I would attach an image, I would attach a video, I would attach a quote, and request a written reply. And then we slowly moved from the written to the oral replies. And this was connected to the work that we were going to complete in the classroom. So you can easily see in this message that I sent my learners that I was provoking them with if clauses. This was something that was coming up naturally in the syllabus. And now I was introducing this through WhatsApp and bringing and bridging everything naturally. Also, something that you might want to look at, and it's free material again, something that the QR code is coming up and you can scan it. 25 ideas for using WhatsApp with English language students. So if you check the OUP blog, you'll find a post by Philip Haynes with this title, and it has some really, really nice ideas for WhatsApp. And again, you can adapt this and use it with different social media outlets. So if you don't use WhatsApp, use Telegram, you can obviously adapt this for Telegram. Now, as in previously, I've been talking about the potential of these apps that are not specifically designed for ELT, and this is the case for Radio Garden. I asked my learners to bring their headphones, and once a year with every class, this is done at least once, I assign them a city from an English-speaking country, and everybody has a different city in different countries, and they have to listen to a radio station and make notes about what they listen. They have to pay attention to accents that they're listening to, what type of music was played, make notes of what the radio host presenter was talking or sharing, and then we come together and we discuss different issues on what we heard. And this resource, which is free and it's fantastic, it's very interesting because a lot of our students can listen to radio from all over the world for pleasure. And I found that from my experience, a lot of the students take this and they're at home, they're studying, and they have this on their tablet, on their phones or on their laptops, and they're actually going through different cities around the world, listening to radio and connecting to genuine content, listening for pleasure, and not listening because they have to complete a specific assignment. So this would be an example. I assigned Toronto, my hometown, to one of the learners, and he had all these different radio stations from available. He selected one, and then he was taking notes and coming together, and we talked about this. And again, if we want to have a lesson on pronunciation, on accents, on intelligibility, great way to bring this topic to life in a natural way. Instant messaging platforms, as mentioned previously, allow learners to do language activities such as conducting an audio message interview, creating an audio diary. Students can be challenged to provide feedback on the work done by their peers, allowing each learner to have a more agentive role in their own language acquisition process. Resources like Trello are also very useful if we're doing group work, and we can assign students different roles, and while they complete the project, they're monitoring each other and completing the task, and we can see what everybody has uploaded, what each student has commented and has done to complete their assignment. So Trello, again, another free app that could be very useful in ELT and for project work. Sometimes student-driven feedback can be used to inform our teaching practice. So for instance, instead of asking learners to fill in a Google form with the many aspects regarding what they liked or disliked about their English lesson or about their English teacher, I've asked them to create a mem. I asked them to create a mem on Mem Generator that would reflect what they thought about their English lessons. they have to present this to the class. So they're going to present their mem to the class. It's not something that they're just going to do randomly without any purpose or consequence. So we're creating, we're reflecting, we're being creative, and we're getting a small presentation out of it. So this would be one of my favorite examples. And I'm a very big Star Trek fan, and this was brilliant to see Patrick Stewart as Captain Picard doing the famous facepalm mem, and it was labeled "When Mr. Lindade gives us more homework." And again, free app, and we can get a lot of feedback on our teaching practices and on what teachers perceive their English lessons. It's quite interesting, the results that we can get. Speaking of feedback, let me tell you a joke by Jerry Seinfeld. And this is from his book, Is This Anything? Did you ever write a report or a paper in school and get it back and the teacher has written vague across the whole page? It's frustrating because vague is kind of a vague thing to say. I would just write unclear and send it back to the teacher. She'd return it to me ambiguous. We're still corresponding to this day. In a 21st century classroom, quality feedback is essential. And obviously, right now we're living a very complex situation. The Omicron situation is a little bit out of control. Some schools are in this hybrid situation. Some schools are going back to online teaching. I was telling Joe and Helen at the beginning that right now I'm in a mixed situation. I have some students at home and I have to set up the computer and the webcam while managing the in-class and the situations that are happening in the physical classroom. And it's a bit crazy. It's a bit hectic at times. Teaching synchronously and asynchronously has become part of repertoire. This is something that COVID has brought. Platforms like Google Classroom or Microsoft Teams, among many other platforms, these are probably the most popular ones among teachers, has allowed us to shift from the standard face-to-face traditional classroom and interact with our students online. And it's my belief that these learner agency principles that I've been outlining throughout this presentation can be combined with online teaching, with in-class teaching, with something in the middle, a blended approach to teaching, and help you deliver excellent ELT content, excellent ELT lessons, and prepare your learners for this very uncertain future. So as a conclusion, I would say, regardless of the app and the task you're completing, keep it simple, keep it action-oriented, and keep it connected. I've set up a little Mentimeter situation here. And the question is, are you likely to use some of these ideas in your teaching context? So if you would be kind enough and you could scan the QR code, you have two different scenarios there, two different questions that you can fill in. The first one is obviously, are you likely to use any of these ideas? And then the second part would be, which idea, which app kind of caught your eye and you would be willing to use it in one of your upcoming lessons? Would you be willing to use TikTok? Would you be willing to use Radio Garden? Maybe you haven't considered WhatsApp, or maybe you just want to check WordWall or just give Padlet or Walklet a check. So if you would be kind enough to fill in this form, I'll have a look at the results in a second. But I'm very curious to hear your questions. Here are some references that I've used throughout the presentation. And if you want to get in touch after the presentation, you can also scan my QR code to get my contact info and send me an email after presentation. So Joe, Helen, I'm available for questions. I'm sorry, I've pushed a little bit past the 45-minute limit, but I think we have a lot of time for questions.
It's all good. Thank you so much, Carlos. That was fantastic. Absolutely fantastic presentation. I knew it would be amazing, but just seeing all your ideas, you'll see afterwards, I've been live tweeting saying, see Lindad says this, see Lindad says that. So as you say, I do love a bit of Twitter. I was absolutely gutted to see that Twitter was one of the apps which is downloaded the least. Philistines, never mind. So we've got a good question
all right.
here. Which is the following: when using WhatsApp Instagram, TikTok, etc. How do you moderate student conversations so the discussion does not go in a direction not related to what is being studied? Do you have any strategies to help with that?
Yeah. Okay. So regardless, when you shift into social media, and before you introduce this, you have to have a very wide and open discussion about how we have to behave online. Okay. So these are really good opportunities to bring the issue of netiquette. Okay. So how do I behave online? How like those little issues about writing in all caps. How is this perceived in an etiquette situation and social media? So before you bring this, you have to have a wide discussion about the expectations on how to behave in this app. And then you introduce this. And of course, WhatsApp in particular has the advantage of being a closed group. So you created the group, you invited the learners, and you can actually, through WhatsApp, freeze a situation that has got out of hand. So you can restrict certain users from your WhatsApp group from writing. You can give them a timeout. So if there's, for some reason, a very enticing discussion happening with advanced learners and things all of a sudden got out of hand, you can assign them a timeout. And this timeout can be 15 minutes or it could be 24 hours. You decide, okay? So you can give them a timeout and say, okay, this has gone overboard. Our group is not for these issues. You guys are talking about personal issues, or you're bringing stuff that is not related to what we're learning. So timeout for you. And then we're going to continue this in 12 hours or tomorrow. Okay. And so students have a chance to cool down. And then if you want, you can have a chat with them in private or send them a private message and have a little bit of discussion. But it's very, from all the social media apps, perhaps WhatsApp is the one that is easiest to manage because you, as the administrator of the group, have a lot of power.
I mean, I hear what you're saying. I mean, my reaction to that is, what would you say to a teacher saying, well, why would I want to use, say, WhatsApp or Instagram when I already have Google Classroom or Microsoft Teams, and that's a moderated environment, and the students need to use their school email addresses, where if it's WhatsApp, my understanding would be the teacher would then see the students' telephone numbers, which I would imagine would be an e-safety issue. I mean, what would your reply be to that, Carlos?
The thing about WhatsApp is that it's something that it's immediate. So, for instance, while I'm not going to connect immediately with all the notifications I get on Google Classroom, especially in contexts where each teacher has his own classroom. So in my scenario, in my teaching context, sometimes students have 13 different classrooms. They're constantly bombarded by all these notifications in their emails. It's like, so, teacher posted this, somebody comment that, and so they're not going to connect immediately to what you posted on Classroom. So I use Google Classroom. I think it's fantastic. I've done assessment over Google Forms. But what I found is that when I'm trying to engage my learners, they're not easily connected. They don't go there on a daily basis. They'll go there maybe once a week because you reminded them there was a task to complete online. But through WhatsApp, I can send them a little note saying, hey, there's a poll happening on our Google Classroom and you all forgot to complete it. So again, it's a really easy way to connect with them immediately, and they don't ignore it because they're already using it to talk with their girlfriend, their boyfriend, their family members. They're using it to talk with friends from all over the world. And so it's something that it's quite natural. It's not something that they feel that, okay, now I need to do schoolwork, let me go to class. It's natural. They're using English spontaneously, connecting with the group, giving feedback. And again, when I was giving you the example of social issues, social problems, a student can be walking home from school, going to his neighborhood. He sees that perhaps there's something going on pollution-wise, people are not recycling properly. He can quickly take a picture on his phone, post it on Instagram or share it on WhatsApp, and you can have an interesting discussion immediately on that, or just use that input to talk about physical, like in the face-to-face classroom. So the amount of opportunities, are insane. It's all about how you want to use it for which purpose. I always like to use it to continue discussions in the class that started in the classroom and connected, and have the English continue, and bringing other issues and having them go home thinking about the topic that we discussed and giving that extra perspective. It's like, actually, I just heard this song that is connected to what we talked about, like, and they share the YouTube link, and everybody shared that experience. Everybody shared that research. Oh, I just saw this news, or my father just talked about this, and share a little news article with the group, and we all learned through that experience. So that would be my 5 cents on that. Classroom is great, but it's not always immediately. When we use social media, it's immediate. You'll be surprised by the amount of feedback, immediate feedback. In 24 hours, everybody has done perhaps the comments that you wanted them to do. And when you use Classroom, sometimes you have to beg.
Well, I do hear what you're saying. I get the idea around engagement of the students. I think my worry would be, from a safeguarding point of view, if something were to go wrong. For example, if in a WhatsApp group, let's say, someone were to post an inappropriate comment or an inappropriate image, that the teacher would then be liable for the outcomes of that. And
But again,
I totally understand what you're saying.
That's why we have to have this conversation previously, on what this group is for, what we use it for, and of course, if we all agree that, okay, we're going to use this for this purpose, let's go ahead. If our students are they're goofing off and they don't take their learning seriously, then maybe this is not the route to go. Maybe this is something to leave maybe in the sidelines and think about different type of apps and different type of strategies. It really depends on where we teach, who we teach. I mean, if you're teaching adults,
absolutely,
you're probably not going to have a problem. Would I use this with 10-year-olds? No. Would I do I use it with teenagers? Absolutely. I use it with teenagers. I've taught at the University of the Azores, where I piloted my first study with WhatsApp. Brilliant, really worked. Their grades went up, increased their engagement, increased their how they felt. And of course, we can incorporate, if we use rubrics, or depending on the type of assessment that we have in the place we work, we can incorporate, okay, so 10% is for the work that we do on WhatsApp, and they feel compelled to do that because it's part of their assessment. It's not extra work they're doing for the sake of doing it. They're doing it because it's connected to what they're expected to do for their learning outcomes and for their learning experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's very, very engaging. I'm feeling enthusiastic hearing how you're using the different ideas, which is obviously why I thought it'd be fantastic for you to share the ideas with everybody. Thanks. I think from a UK context, I'm sure Helen can speak more precisely about this in her own context, about the use of things like Instagram when students are creating accounts and things like that, about safeguarding. I mean, what would you say about that, Helen, for example?
Well, I think the thing is, in the UK, we really do have quite strict rules, but it'll depend it depends on the context. The important thing is, though, that I think all of the ideas you gave, we could use through whatever channel we are allowed to use.
Exactly.
So I noticed that Helen there was saying that on Google Classroom, it's instant, and on Teams, it's instant.
Exactly.
And I'm sitting here thinking, I know that I do get messages about changing of times or changing of rooms, and I should be using it more like this, and why not? So I think it's been really helpful, even though, as you say rightly, the key is we're all in different contexts. At the moment I do a little bit of help with teaching adults English, and I'm just loving this and thinking, yes, I can do this. So
yes, definitely. Like all these ideas can be combined, can be adapted to where you teach. Maybe you're not going to use this in your learning context because your school, as you said, Helen, is very strict. There are no mobile phones in my context. Can't use this. But maybe I teach a private class after work, and I can use this in a private lesson with a small group. Why not?
What I love is definitely what you're saying. I think you started off right at the beginning saying the problem that we're going down the grammar route.
Yeah.
And yet all these are lovely ideas you've given us as things which we need to. They're ideas that perhaps we've seen similar things beforehand, but sometimes you just need that injection of actually, yes, let's do this. I mean, I had just during this time.
We can start off with the textbook. There's nothing wrong with the textbook, but it doesn't give us that real world perspective. It doesn't connect. I mean, especially if you're using a global course book, you know, like it's going to give you the stereotypical image, you know, on these different topics. And it doesn't always help you connect with your audience. So again, perhaps use that as a starting point, but then have your students create their own learning content and empowering them and taking this to the next level. And I mean, especially by, like, for instance, well, even when I do teacher training in Portugal and we use Padlet, and I'm a big fan of Padlet, after we finish the course, I download everything that they've done on Padlet into a PDF and I email it to them, and they love it. They're like, oh, I forgot about this idea, and I forgot, oh yeah, the brilliant ideas, and all. Like, so they have like this little book, be 20, 30, 40 pages, depends on the amount of content you have there. But the way that you can shift a Padlet into a PDF document that compiles all the work that your students completed is great. I mean, even if especially if you have to delete it, at least you can have a reference and you can have a hard copy of the work that was completed. So, I mean, again, we didn't look at how to use in detail all these apps. We were more looking at the bigger picture. But again, maybe we can come back in the future and look in more detail some of these apps and how they work and how the limitations they have or the possibilities they have.
Amazing. Thank you so much. It's been so interesting seeing all the different suggestions on promoting student agency. It's been really fascinating. We're very grateful, Carlos, to you for your
thank you
time,
for the invite. It was my pleasure.
And getting us all to think. I think it's fantastic.
All right. So I'm not sure if there are any more questions here.
I think or someone was asking about how do you share the word wall example. Let me just how do people share a word wall they made with the rest of the class?
Right. So you can just copy the link of the word wall. There's an option there. I don't have it open right here, right now to show you, but there is a possibility there to share the link of the word wall. And if you use Google Classroom or use Microsoft Teams, you can just put that there and then they can just click on the link and complete the work. So again, it's quite easy. Maybe if you send me a message privately, I can just send you a print screen on how to do that via email.
Fantastic. Lovely. Thank you so much. I'm going to have to run because I've got a British Council session right now. But Helen, if you could wrap us up maybe, if that's okay.
Yes,
but thank you so much, Carla, for your time.
Bye, Joe. Thank you so much for the invite.
Just to say thank you very much to Joe then for inviting you, and we've really enjoyed it. So thank you ever so much. And you'll be able to see in the chat at the end as well, just how many ideas people have had as well. So, and anything that you can share with us, I will then put onto we've got a web page where we'll dedicate a web page to you, where we'll put a link to the video, which Joe Dale will do. And then I'll put the chat in there as well and any link. So thank you ever so much indeed. So from everybody, a little round of applause, please.
All right, everybody.
Okay.
Thank you so much. I hope to see you in the future.
Yeah, I hope so too.
All right.
There we are.
Let me just stop sharing here.
Okay, and I shall stop the recording. So
all right, everybody. It was a great pleasure. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.